Black is night, grace death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate make it right.
I myself am strange and unusual.
It's time to cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea. Because it's time for the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Welcome back to the Coven, you guys. I'm super excited that you're here today.
Ooh, welcome back for another episode.
Whoop, whoop. So, Sharon, what do you have to talk about this week?
Well, I did want to share the fact that after we talked about spirit guides for like over an hour last week, I started seeing and experiencing more synchronicities, and it was really weird. Like at first it just feels like it's a coincidence. And what kept happening to me is I would be talking to someone, like either a coworker or a friend, or even sometimes it would be like a song. I would be thinking it in my head, and then that person would say it out loud or sing that song. And it was so weird, and it kept happening and kept happening, and it'd be like weird things. Like the first time I was like, oh, maybe we're just both on the same wavelength and making jokes. And then with like the song, me humming it in my head and then me hearing it out loud, I was like, whoa, that's so weird, I'm psychic. Like, of course I just want to lean into the fact that I have powers, but right. It was really cool. It just kept happening to me, and that was like maybe Monday through like Thursday, and then all of a sudden those last couple of days it's been gone, and I'm like, back to normal life.
You're like, darn it, I was really connecting there.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's awesome.
It was really cool. And I know you liked my weird ghost sex story, so I loved it. I found another weird story to share.
Okay.
So I was reading this article about this Russian woman who did like an online date kind of thing. And the date went really well itself, I guess. Like they went back to his house and they even just like spent the night there. And the weird thing didn't happen until the next morning. The guy like wakes up and he decides to go just take a bath. And while the woman is like in the other room, she decides to go into the bathroom and be like, hey, just so you know, I'm a vampire. And he like looks at her and he's like, yeah, well, I'm a werewolf. Like, I think he's just joking. He's like, oh, okay, lady. And so she's like, she leaves the room kind of annoyed. She goes to the kitchen, grabs a knife, goes back into the bathroom, and then starts to try to stab him in the chest. And she successfully stabbed him a couple times.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's just like, in the articles, it's written like it's a paranormal fight between these two, werewolf and vampire, like having a scuffle. And he ends up like pushing her off of him, and he runs to like the neighbors, and then she gets out of there and goes. But he calls the police on her and everything and makes a report. And I just thought it was so weird. Like, what if they were these paranormal things that ended up meeting, having sex, and then fighting?
So was she drinking his blood? Did it say that she was actually drinking his blood?
You know, it didn't mention that. Oh. Just that she was just like decided to stab him.
That sounds like straight up murder to me, but
yeah.
Attempted murder.
Yeah, and the way the article is written, it didn't even like say that the guy was being sarcastic. It just is like, no, he was a werewolf.
Right.
So that was pretty entertaining.
Oh, that is so cool. Well, I have something to share too, kind of an update from last week as well. So we had talked about, I had this dream about a house that I grew up in West Salem, and then I did some hypnosis therapy, and in my hypnosis, I kept having this thing chanted over and over again, go back to where it all began, and that I needed to find this Bible that my dad has. So funny thing is that we got done with the podcast last week, and I went about my normal day and made a point to say, hey, I'm going to call my dad in a little bit. Well, he ended up calling me, and I was really excited. I was like, sweet, I don't have to make the phone call. He called me first. And then
that is cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that happens, right? Sometimes with family, you're thinking about them and then they call you, or friends. Yeah. Thinking about them, they call you. I love that. So we're just having a regular conversation. And then I said, hey, I have something strange to tell you and to ask you about. I was like, I need you to keep an open mind. So I just told him, I was like, hey, I had this dream about the old house. I needed to find the white Bible. And he said, yeah, I still have that. I'll get it for you and I'll bring it to you. And I was like, great, that's awesome. And I said, it's really weird, but they kept chanting in my dream and in hypnosis. Well, I didn't tell him about hypnosis. I just said dream, because I didn't want him to get weirded out that I was under hypnosis learning about all this stuff.
Yeah, but you're already disclosing a lot, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I just told him, I was like, in my dream, I kept hearing the words, go back to where it all began. And I just felt that this Bible is going to help me with something that's going on in my life right now. And he got really quiet for a minute. And I was like, are you still there? He's like, yeah, it's really weird that you say that. He's like, when you were little, we moved into that house when you were about 3.5. And he says, you didn't come with us to the house when we went and looked at it, but your mom and I picked it out. And he said, in the basement of the house, written on the wall, was go back to where it all began.
What?
Yes. And so when we moved in, everything had been painted, but apparently, and I did start thinking about it. I had a memory of a conversation with my mom, like maybe one conversation. She told me I had been picking paint off the windowsill, because I was a little kid just picking paint. So a piece had chipped off and I saw that it was red underneath, and my mom said, don't touch that. And I was like, why is it red under here? And she had said something like, well, when we moved in, this house was really weird. And she said all the walls were painted different colors, including red, black. She said there were pentagrams on the walls. And
what?
When I was little, I didn't even think about it, and I didn't know what a pentagram was.
Oh
and
my God.
The fact that information was written in the basement was totally crazy, right?
What do you think? That it was more an evil thing, or they were just doing good magic?
I don't know.
Because is that the basement that was haunted?
Yeah, that whole house was haunted. Constantly. So I got the Bible from my dad and I brought it home. It's still in the same original box that I remember it in.
Cool.
Yeah, so I took it out. I was really excited. I was like, maybe I'm going to hold it and I'm going to get some vibes. I don't know why this Bible is so important. And I open it up, and the first page I turned to, it's like it fell open. And for some reason, when stuff like that happens, I always think it's not a coincidence. I think there's some reasoning behind it. And so it opened up to this page, and it was pictures of a river, and it just said the beginning up above it.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, go back to where it all began, the word the beginning.
Right.
It's so weird. And so then I just kept thinking in my mind that I needed to find that family tree that was located in there, because I thought if I can find the family tree, maybe I can find this witch that's in our family. I just need to know more about our history. And I do remember, I have these vivid memories of my mom writing the family tree in the Bible. And then when she was done, I would read it, but she's like, don't touch it because the ink is going to smear. And I remember her taking so much time. She wrote with a specific blue ink pen, like probably a ballpoint ink pen, those Bic ones. Mm-hmm. But the pages are kind of shiny. And so I kept looking and looking in the book. And at first I couldn't find it. I was like, where is this family tree? I can't find it. So I went to the beginning of the Bible, and it said, hey, turn to page blah, 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 and this is where you're going to find it. And so I turned, and it wasn't there. And I was like, this is so crazy. So I'm looking after that page, several pages. And I finally decided to go look before those pages, and I finally found it. But the weird thing is, it's separated kind of like your current family, your past family, your mother's family, your father's family, that kind of thing. And it's all written, not like on a regular family tree where it's a picture of a tree and you have to fill it all in. It's just lines where you write the information down. And
I couldn't remember exactly how it looked. In my mind, I had it a little more glamorized.
Right. Yeah, because it's a pretty cool book. I mean, honestly, the pages are lined in gold. It's just pretty interesting. Anyways, my mom had written, and it's still imperfect, as if she's just written it today, because nobody uses this book. My dad doesn't use it. He just had it as a keepsake. So it still says my mom's name, my dad's name, my sister's name. And then I'm flipping through, and all the rest of them are blank. Even though I have memories of her writing everything down.
So everyone else is gone?
Everything is gone.
What? Did you ask your dad about that?
No, I didn't. He just, when he handed me the Bible, he said something strange that didn't sound strange at the time. But then once I found that all the pages, the people were gone, everything that had been written was gone, he said to me, he's like, some of the ink might have rubbed off, and you might have to rewrite things. But this wasn't like the ink got rubbed off. They're just completely gone.
Right?
So I don't know what to think. I don't know what my purpose for this book is.
Not yet. Maybe just spend some more time with it. I mean, did he give it to you to take home?
Yeah, it's mine now for the rest of my life.
Awesome. So maybe you'll get a different dream. Maybe you need to keep digging. Maybe even talk to your mom about it, because if she was the one writing it down. That's true.
That's true. Maybe my memory is wrong. I mean, I was a kid. Things get jumbled around over time, but...
I mean, you did just say last time that you remember her writing your sister's name, so...
Yeah.
Maybe it was just immediate family, but maybe there's something weirder going on.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just strange. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, the fact that your house was owned by some sort of potential cult or coven is very interesting.
Right.
Can you find out who owned your house? That'd be awesome.
I kept looking it up. Like, after that, I was like, after my phone call conversation with my dad, I was like, shoot, I totally remember that back in the day, there used to be satanic covens here. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, shoot, I need to look that up. Maybe it has something to do with that. But every time I kept looking up, go back to where it all began, it was just like, oh, in the beginning there was this.
You know, it's interesting because that does sound like very stereotypical satanic panic, like Hollywood type of thing, where black and red walls with pentagrams on them. So
yeah, and it would have been, let's see, so we probably moved in there in 1980. Mm-hmm. Dang, I'm just telling everybody my age now. But yeah, so I don't know what it all means, but hopefully I'll figure it out and I'll keep everybody posted. So
yeah, I think that you found out a lot already.
Yeah.
Anything like that, I guess it wouldn't be like a super magical thing that you're going to find in the book right away. Like maybe a memory is going to come to you, or your spirit guide will come to you again.
Right. It's crazy though, right? About the painting on the wall. And my dad was just like,
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, because I'm kind of surprised that they even bought the house knowing that was there. It must have been really cheap.
Oh, we didn't buy that house. We were renting it.
Renting?
Yeah, for years.
So the people who were renting it could have been in the cult?
Yeah, it was people who rented it.
Oh my god. And what if they were like cursing you guys or experimenting and like, what if they sent everything to you? Like, all
I don't know. When I was telling my kids, when I had to tell my kids the story, and my daughter was like, shoot, what if that's why you have all the abilities you have? I was like, no, they started before then, but I'm pretty sure because my mom told me stories from before. So, I mean, it could have happened all in that house. I don't know. It's all weird.
What happened? Yeah, what were their rituals? What were the intention of them? It's rare that I kind of get like that, but just the way you describe the situation, it just sounds nefarious. Like, it doesn't sound like a nice little Wiccan cult.
Right. It just it all makes sense, though, for me now, remembering how that house was, because there was so much activity, daily activity in that house. Mm-hmm. And I lived there for 12 years. We lived there for 12 years, I think.
And what was the normal type of activity? Was it just something moving, or was it seeing it like apparitions?
Slamming doors, seeing apparitions.
Wow.
Yeah, dogs. There were ghost dogs, black ghost dogs. Yeah. Let's see. I told you about the balls of light. There was this kind of go-between the dining room and the kitchen, where if you walked through it, it felt like electricity was going through your body, and that's where spirits would come from sometimes. Mm-hmm. And
your house was...
Yeah, it was just crazy. Like, it was like all these things. I saw all of these things.
This is the same house where you would see like the Indian guy in the bathroom?
Yes.
And okay, and there were like bones in the backyard, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this could have been like a very spiritual ground that maybe your house was on.
Right.
And so people would be maybe called to do magic there more than anywhere else, maybe.
Probably. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that house still there?
Yes. Yeah, somebody else owns it now.
Like, can I
wish my dad would have bought it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was he had the opportunity to purchase it, and then he didn't. He ended up getting a different, larger house because it was kind of small. I mean, I think it was like 700 square feet.
Yeah, just one of those older, tinier rooms.
Yeah, it was just really small, and it had 2 bedrooms, a third one that was built in the basement. There was a secret room down there. Mm-hmm. Just It wasn't that big, but it was nice. It was a good sized lot, so there was a huge backyard, but it just wasn't big enough, I think, for my dad.
And maybe he didn't like seeing ghosts every day. Maybe
he didn't really. He just explained it all away. Every time we'd ask him about it, he's like, I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was.
It's crazy.
That was the same place where we found the baby blanket, by the way.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Baby blanket Colt. No! This is like X-Files, Rosemary's Baby kind of stuff right here.
Yeah.
Wow.
So lots to unpack in that house.
I know.
I don't know if it's still like that. What if it all left when I did? Who knows?
I don't know. Because, I mean, you were at that age where poltergeist activity is really visible to you.
Yeah. So. Like, I've had so many things happen to me. I don't want to share them all because then maybe I won't have stuff to talk about in other episodes of the podcast. But I have so many instances. So hopefully they'll come out. I'll come out eventually.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
for
on that,
your listening pleasure.
Yes, it's always interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm still thinking I'm stuck on pentagrams on the walls, and
I know,
just like
black and red, and like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah. Did you guys sacrifice
go back
that
to where
baby?
it all began? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Oh my God. I'm starting to really freak myself out.
I'm sorry. Every time I talk about it, I get electricity running through my body, like chills. I feel like every time I tell the story, since it's because this is all recent. This has all happened within the last week. So every time I'm talking to anybody about it, I'm just like, holy crap. And then I get this electricity through my body and I get freezing cold.
Maybe it's time for some more hypnosis.
Probably.
Well, you keep us updated.
Yes, I will.
And I'm thinking we could move on to maybe draw a random topic from our cauldron. For new listeners in our cauldron, we just have like witchy topics that we like to discuss briefly.
Yeah. Okay. Nature and the craft.
That I can get on. I feel like nature and the craft is like so important. Obviously, I know I've talked about it before, but just being outside and looking for the signs of, what's around you, what the animals are doing, to me, that is magic. Like, nature is magic.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree. And as we've said before, it could be, the forest. It could be near a river. It could be near the ocean. Wherever you're at. It doesn't even matter if there are other people around. Just being in nature.
Mm-hmm. So much power just comes from the earth and the elements. And even if I'm not outside, if I'm doing my magic inside, I'm always going to have something on my altar to represent like the 4 elements, like a seashell or water. The incense is supposed to represent air, and you have like maybe flames going. But I'm always drawing elements into my craft. I think it's just one of the biggest inspirations I've had with my magic.
Right. Didn't you take ocean water or sand?
Yeah.
When you were here last time?
Yeah, I have 2 vials of water from Oregon, which is weird. But when I went to Silver Creek Falls, I bottled some in a really pretty crystal, I think it's a vodka or rum bottle, but it's just really pretty. It has like a little diamondy crystal top. And then I have another bottle that's like in a little glass unicorn from the ocean.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of our other cousins helped me fill that up, so it makes it even more special.
That's right. We were all out there trying to fill it up.
We were. Yeah, it was freezing cold. We were and I didn't even have to explain to my other cousins what this was. They were just like, Sharon, trying to get water, let's do this.
We're in.
Yeah. So they helped me with that. I thought that was really beautiful. I wonder if they know how much that means to me and that it's like sacred water to me.
Yeah, so cool.
Mm-hmm. I know we're huge on the water element, but I think that just all the elements are important.
Right. Sometimes I have leaves
cool.
that I bring into whatever I'm doing. Or
do you do like little the mandalas with leaves?
No, I've never done that.
I was seeing those, and I made like the little orange ones, but I was like, ooh, I want to do this more. But I know in Oregon you have way more opportunity. There's way more leaves everywhere.
I have a whole front and backyard full of leaves right now that I need to rake.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I like rocks and pine cones and crystals.
I do have a lot of rocks. I have so many rocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a rock that my mom gave me when I was like a little girl, like maybe 8 or 9, were younger. We were out swimming in like a little lake, and she gave me this rock that's in the shape of a crescent moon. And she was like, "Here you go, Sailor Moon, it's for you." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And so now I just have it forever. Cool. Oh. So, and to me, that's like a little magical rock. So it's on my altar too. And another way that like a family member has just made an impact on me, and I keep that little nature away from my altar. And I don't know if they even remember that moment, but to me, it's always magical.
Yeah, that's so sweet. I love it.
Yeah, so I don't know. What else do you think about nature and the craft?
Weather, I guess. I think of the different elements of weather that are going on at the time and how you can use that.
Oh my gosh, when you said that, it made me think of like rain and thunder. That's one of my favorite things. If I'm home alone, I will open up the screen door, blast some like pagan music, light some incense, and start like getting into tarot cards. I love the sound of the rain and thunder.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so nice.
It is. I have been going to sleep to that like every night recently too, just like on my phone.
Yeah, I do have that on my phone too. So sometimes, especially if I'm really stressed, I'll listen to music all night long. Mm-hmm.
There we are again, leading into the love of water.
I know,
we
right?
We can't help it. We're Pisces.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I listen to crackling fire too.
Nice.
There's something about, I really do love fire. Not like, burning houses down fire, but, fire.
Yeah, I have bum fires at my altar sometimes. I just have like little cauldrons, and I'll pour in some candle wax and then light my paper that I'm working on and burning, and I just like have this little freaking fire just going. It's so comical. I'm like, this can't be safe. I have a fire extinguisher, but it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Well, what do you think? Should we move on to our main topic?
Yes, let's move on to the main topic. So we're discussing werewolves today, for those of you who don't know.
Yes, I'm excited about this one, and I learned a lot about werewolves I never knew. Tales of men turning into bloodthirsty beasts, they can be found in like ancient tales all through mythology and Norse lore, and I knew that they were the subject of many stories throughout the world. And, I just kind of, when I think of werewolf, I think of like the current werewolf, which is just usually like a shirtless, sexy dude. Like Alcide from True Blood, or then we had that horrible like Twilight thing going on, and that's how I think of like modern day werewolves. But I didn't realize that back in the day they believed in werewolves, and that people who were serial killers were known to confess that they were werewolves. And while there were witch trials, there were werewolf trials.
Wow, I actually didn't know there were werewolf trials. I knew that the belief in werewolves was throughout history. Yeah, like I read accounts of Native Americans skinning wolves and then wearing their pelt to try to take on the energy of the wolf so that they could then catch other animals.
Yeah, like a form of animism.
Right.
Yeah, I was a little shocked. Apparently it wasn't as many deaths as witch trials, but it's kind of interesting because I used to think it was such a sexist thing and it was men always coming after women, but I guess there was a little bit of, men had that too. Because in these trials, they would be tortured. So who knows? It's just the same thing. Like they had to be tortured into confessing that they were a wolf.
Gotcha. Did you read I know I read accounts that people sometimes used a salve to turn into a werewolf.
Yeah, that was like the most common one back in the day.
Right.
Was the salve, and apparently like wearing a belt of fur made from a wolf skin.
Right. The other one I read, which I thought was really interesting, is that they would astral project into a wolf to become the wolf. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard about that too, and that could be because a deal with the devil was made kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like there was this case that I thought was pretty disturbing but interesting. About one of these trials. It was this guy Peter Stubb. Yeah, he was a German farmer, and this was like back in the 15th century, and like he became known as the werewolf of Bedburg. And he was, back in the day, he was accused of being a werewolf, of practicing witchcraft, and like even cannibalism. And so hunters claimed that they saw him shapeshift from a wolf to a human. And it's really interesting because this is one of many accounts of people claiming to see their neighbor be a wolf. And so you just have to go back. Is it like the witch trials? Is it just hysteria? Is it just paranoia, you know, or was the world back then just a more magical place openly, and was this shit happening, you know?
Right.
But in the years preceding to Stubbs' arrest, the county of Bedburg, they had all these really horrible instances of cattle mutilation, and then eventually it led to bodies of town folks being found in the fields as well. And they were just thought they were under attack of this giant wolf, or maybe like a pack of wolves. So back in 1589, there was a hunting party, and they actually ended up cornering one of these wolves with a bunch of these hounds that they had. And when the humans approached to like go get at it and like give the final blow and kill it, it wasn't a wolf at all. It had changed into Peter Stubb, and he was like a man was being cornered, which is a pretty interesting tale. So this could be bullshit. It could just be a legend, but it is really interesting. And they said that the most damning piece of evidence was that Stubbs' left arm had been lopped off, and that the wolf, that they had injured his arm and they had chopped it off while they were chasing him.
Dang.
Yeah. So if that's true, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah, that is.
And like the crimes that he confessed to doing were horrible. And it goes back to the witch trials. Was he pushed into saying these things, or did he really do them? Because he was tortured on a rack, which I don't really know what that means. I think that they were either stretching him out, or they were tying him up and like doing horrible things to him.
Right. Well, you've seen those like in the old movies where there's a rack that's suspended from the ceiling with chains. Maybe they had him on there. Yeah,
kind of like that. Maybe is what I was thinking. I did make a note like look up rack and torture wheel, but then I forgot. But he said that he had been practicing black magic since he was 12, and that he made a deal with the devil, and that the devil gave him that magical belt that when he put it on, he'd be turned into a really powerful wolf. And I don't know why he would want to do this, because when he wore that belt, it just gave him this insatiable like bloodlust. And he would eat goats, he would eat sheep, and then he ended up even killing 14 children, 2 pregnant women. And this is where it gets messed up. It said he ripped the fetuses from their wombs and he ate them raw. And he would describe them in court as being dainty morsels. And
Yikes.
One of the 14 children was his own son, whose brain he had reported to devour.
Yikes.
Yeah. So he says he ate all these people, and on top of that, his daughter was his mistress. And
oh my gosh,
he was having sex with her. Yeah, and that because he was guilty, he decided to kill the daughter and his girlfriend. And they kill them by strangling them and burning them, and it was just really messed up. And then the way they killed him so that he would never come back is that they ended up, I think, putting him on a torturing wheel. They ripped off his skin with these like iron rods, pulling his skin off, then chopping off his head, and then putting on a pole with like a wolf pelt. So people were freaking barbaric back in the day before Netflix, man. It was disgusting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So who's the victim here? Like, did he really do any of these things?
Right. Who knows? I mean, it's not like today where we keep track of everything, but who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, so, you know, my little romantic thoughts of werewolves just being really sexy guys got really blown up in my face to realize that the history of them just comes from the fact that back in, like, the Middle Ages, people did some messed up stuff.
Right.
I read so much about killing children over the last week. It was ridiculous.
Wow. I did not find any of that. I got sucked up into the lore of the Native Americans and just wearing their pelts, so...
That's much more peaceful.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't find like any books at the library. I decided to go to my used bookstore, and they had this old book that was written in the 1800s. It was called The Book of Werewolves. It was by Sabine Baring-Gould, and it was from the perspective of where did the werewolf lore come from? Why do we believe in it? Why are people being tried for it? You know, where does this bloodlust come from? And it was a really old book, and he was just saying how the whole belief in werewolves kind of can be tracked from oral legends, but the first like written one was from like a legend in Arcadia where this Lycion was the king there, and like he had some sort of tale about turning into a wolf, just depending on which one.
Right, I read about that one.
Yeah, so that kind of was where a lot of people agree, or like in history they agree that's where it all started from. And I even was reading in my book that apparently back in Arcadia in the day, people would get attacked by wolves a lot there, so they had a big fear of wolves, and something they would do to combat that was sacrifice children to the wolves.
Oh my gosh. No wonder why there's so many tales of wolves eating children.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Like Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense because everything I was reading about was that these wolves were killing little boys and little girls.
Oh my gosh.
It was super messed up. And one of the papers back in the Middle Ages, they tried to come up with maybe theories as why this was happening. Why were men coming forward, killing kids and saying they were werewolves? And they were saying maybe one of the reasons is it's just a fantasy that they're a wolf. You know, they're really humans, but they're tricked into these weird hallucinations because Satan is making them think they're wolves. And then the people who run into them are also being tricked by Satan to see that that's a wolf, not a man. So people back in the day were trying to come up with a reason for it.
That's interesting. That kind of ties into the story that I'm going to tell in a little bit.
Oh, nice.
I think.
Nice. Yeah. There was another thing that came up in my book that I do have to mention because it was silly.
Okay.
But again, with the Middle Ages, you know, there's a lot of belief in witches and wizards. There's a huge belief that people can just turn into different animals. And back then, they were thinking that witches and wizards were turning into cats. And this was like in 1566. And it was said that there was just huge gathering of witches and warlocks, but in cat form. And that they attacked these 4 men. And it was like the most savage fight that these men had ever been through. And like I took a direct quote from the book because it was just so ridiculous, like the language that this book used. It said that they minced at their ground with the utmost heroism, succeeding in slaying one puss and in wounding many others.
I wounded the puss, man.
Yeah. And then they said that like the next day all these women were like found in town with all these messed up like limbs and stuff. And then when they were asked about it, it was like, yeah, I had this fight, man. I was a cat and blah, blah, blah. So, like, I don't know what was going on in the world back then, but apparently it was much more magical.
There was a lot of messed up alcohol and food, I suppose.
You're going to blame the bad bread?
Yeah, bad bread. No, I want to know what size were the cats. Were they just little cats? Like
I think
house
so.
Cats?
I think
oh my
so.
gosh.
That's how I read
funnier.
it. And
that's even funnier.
Dude, I read this whole book in like 2 days. It was like 300 pages, but I could not put it down. It was just like account after account of these weird middle-age occurrences of
that's so cool.
People turning into wolves and horrible murders.
Mm-hmm.
The last one I will have to share just because it just left me with horrible scars, and I want to scar you people as well. I can't be alone with this. There was like this guy, I think he was a count, but he had like his own little castle, like a little fortress, and he would keep it, and this is all true stuff. You can find like the court records, you can look it up, but I think his name was like Michael or Mikiao, and people started smelling like horrible smells coming from there, and they realized that it's because he was killing kids. And when he ended up going on trial and his place was all locked up, people had to use like a grappling hook to get up to the tower. And when they got inside, the entire tower was just full of mutilated bodies, children bodies with no heads.
Oh my gosh.
And so they just start throwing the heads and the bodies out this horrible, like out the tower window to land down below. And they were like, there's more heads than bodies.
Oh no.
It was so messed up. And that in court,
no.
like everyone who he worked with started turning against him, and they were saying how he loved like mutilating children, cutting them up, like drinking their blood and doing it in the most slow way possible and watching them cry and suffer, and that he said he was a werewolf.
During that whole thing he was a wolf?
That's his claim.
Okay.
So it super disturbing.
Wow.
Super
Maybe
disturbing.
he just took on the wolf attributes. I don't know. It's hard to say, but that's really disturbing.
It's weird because witches and werewolves, these are like these negative archetypes of men and women, and it's just blowing out their most toxic, evil sides of them.
Right.
So I don't know what that really says about the fear in society.
Sure.
But I was kind of surprised that most of this lore wasn't centered around the full moon thing. Like, I think that might have been a newer concept.
Yeah, I think so too. I swear that probably came from movies or something.
Maybe the Wolfman or something.
Yeah, like back in the day, like 40s and 50s or something.
Oh, yeah, and they would call this whole thing, this whole condition of, like, men with their bloodlust, like, lycanthropy, and they thought it was, like, this rare psychological condition that would cause people to believe that they're changing into a wolf or some sort of another animal, and that people who were under this would be reported as, like, they would howl, they would foam at the mouth, and just be, like, super bloodthirsty.
Yikes.
There was another medical condition that kind of leads into this. It was called hypertrichosis.
Hypertrichosis.
Yeah. So I've looked at pictures of this, and it's just like it's a weird, rare genetic disorder that causes excessive hair growth. And I'm sure you might have seen this on like maybe Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Yes.
But basically, they look like a Wookiee. Like it just grows out from the face, goes long behind them, just like Chewbacca, all over their body.
Right. And that's an extreme case. Like most people today, when they have hypertrichosis, they have like a unibrow and extremely hairy arms.
It's weird because I've seen it both ways. I've seen it like where it's patchy black all over. And then I've seen it where it's super long, like legit like a Wookiee. And like one of these women, you can like see her in this old like black and white photograph in her like Victorian dress. And I guess she would just go on to like freak shows and be the bearded lady kind of a thing, or the hairy beast lady.
I do remember that being on like Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Yeah. But I never found a case where that person was being accused of a werewolf.
No, It was just a disease that they had.
I don't know why you would want to be turned into a werewolf, because the only advantage I saw is that you had strength, speed, and fast healing. But, you know, the negatives is that you want to kill people.
Right.
And you're uncontrollable. And then it's really tiring on the own body.
Right.
But, you know, I guess a way to kill them is silver bullets in some stories. There's also wolfsbane, like the plant. And some people say it kind of can kill them or ward them off. Like if you hang wolfsbane in your doorway, that you should be good. Like they're not going to come mess with you.
Right. And I think the silver bullet thing came later. I don't think that was always what people thought. I feel like that came later on. But the wolfsbane was always a thing. I feel like everything that I read, wolfsbane was always something that I read, or cutting off the head.
Yeah. Like, I was watching Ginger Snaps this week. Have you ever seen that?
No, but I've heard of it.
Oh, it's actually really good, and that's what they use to try to like save the sister, is use ginger snap is to use a wolfsbane, like a little serum.
Okay.
That was a really good like 90s movie. Maybe it's early 2000s, but it's like the female perspective of turning into a werewolf and how that makes you have uncontrollable desires or bloodlust, and like it's definitely a metaphor for puberty, because like the little girl, she starts her period and then she starts getting like these werewolf symptoms.
And then she wolfs out.
Yeah, and like when she has sex with the dude, he gets it, and like he's like gets these extreme pimples and bloodlust. So, but it was actually really good. Like I have always heard about ginger snaps. So it's so good. And I was like, I doubt it. And then I watched it this week, and I was really surprised it held up. And I found out there's 3 of them, and it's both the same actresses in all 3 of them. And the third one, it's like Ginger Snaps back, and they go back to like the origins, and it's like really Middle Ages.
Oh, you know, maybe I'll have to watch them. I hadn't really had any desire to watch them, but now that we're talking about it,
I recommend it. I do recommend it. They're like cheesy but cool.
Okay. I'm adding it to my list of things to do this week.
Yeah. I think it's a really good one. My favorite ultimate werewolf movie would have to be American Werewolf in London.
Oh, yeah. You know, wasn't that a book? I seem to remember reading a bunch of wolf books when I was in middle school.
I don't know if it was based off a book, but have you seen the movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
The old one and the new one.
Yeah, and in that one, like, kind of like earlier, I heard you talk about pentagrams on the wall. Like, they go to this old, like, Scottish bar, and there's, like, a pentagram on the wall. And, like, his friend and him are just talking about it, but they couldn't even pronounce the word pentagram. Like, he was like, it's a penica. And I was like, what? Your director should have, like, helped you out with that.
Yeah.
But I love that movie.
Yeah, it's good.
It probably has, like, the best transformation scene pre-CG that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
What would be your favorite werewolf movie?
I just like the really old Wolfman movie.
Really?
I really think, I don't know what it is. I love old movies, so I think that has something to do with it.
I've never seen it. It's actually good?
Yeah, it's good in a kind of, just like in Ginger Snaps, it's good sort of in a comical way. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure they took it more serious back then, but now I'm just like, haha, look at his little suit. He looks so cute.
Aw. Is there like a romance in it or anything?
I wouldn't say there's a romance in it. You know what's the other one that I really liked in the Munsters, when the little boy turns into a wolf all the time?
Does he?
Little Eddie Munster.
I know he's a werewolf.
He turns into a wolf.
Remember.
Yeah, he turns into this little wolf, and then he wolfs out, and he's got this little beard, but he's small like a kid.
Aww. That's pretty cute.
Yeah.
It's just the Wolfman, the original one?
Yeah, the original, the Wolfman. Mm-hmm. I feel like back in the 50s and 60s, they had all these, like, kind of cult classic kind of movies. Like, I know they did stuff on zombies and vampires. Like, if you think of the original vampire movies.
Yeah, they had their whole slew, like the Frankenstein, Dracula.
Yeah.
Thank God they stopped doing the reboots after the horrible Mummy movie.
I know, right?
With Tom Cruise came out.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. I kind of refuse to watch it for some reason.
Right. No thanks. After all that Scientology stuff, I'm just like, y'all know he's crazy, right? Like, we're still watching his movies?
I think it was more like, didn't we do this movie already?
Oh, yeah.
I just can't do it.
I'll take Brendan Fraser Mummy any day. That movie's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And Scorpion King.
I'll even do the first Scorpion King. They just made another one. I was like, really?
What? Yeah, I did not know that.
I know. I think I've only seen maybe 2, but really it's not. I feel like after 1, you don't really need to watch anymore.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to move on, and we're going to give you some fun and real werewolf stories. You're traveling through another realm. A realm not only out of fairy tale and magic, but of nightmares that go bump in the night.
A journey into a fantasy land whose boundaries are only that of the imagination. Next stop, the Coven Zone. All right, so my story, you guys, is called The Church Lady. It is based on a true story. I have changed the names up a little bit. I got this from a book called Monsters Among Us by Linda S. Godfrey. And she did have some names in there, but I kind of added a little embellishments to their names because I couldn't keep it straight. So here's my little story. It was a beautiful sunny morning in the spring of 1992 at a Baptist church in a small town in the Midwest. Regular parishioners Ken and Sarah Oberlin were sitting in the front row with their 2 children, listening intently to the minister's sermon. Seated next to them was a woman that had only been going to the church for about a month. She normally sat in the back of the church, but for some reason this particular Sunday, she sat in the front pew next to the Oberlin family. Neither Ken nor Sarah had really spoken with this woman before. It dawned on them they didn't even know her name. The Oberlin family felt drawn to staring at this woman. Ken couldn't seem to take his eyes off of her. She wasn't very attractive. She was big-boned, with dark hair, and she had extremely strong, almost masculine facial features. She also had more hair on her eyebrows, neck, and arms than the average woman. The woman fidgeted next to the Oberlin family during the whole sermon. After a short while, the sermon ended and the minister left the podium to go sit with his family. He needed to walk past the front row towards the side of the room where his family was sitting. As the minister got closer to the woman, she suddenly jumped up. She let out this blood-curdling banshee-type scream. Her body began contorting, and within the blink of an eye, she turned into this wolf-like creature. It had the head of a wolf, with backwards knee-type legs and hooves, reminiscent of Pan. It had this thick, black fur from its head to its calves, 6-inch-long sharp nails that looked like they could tear someone in half, and very distinct wolf-like teeth with 4.5-inch fangs, so sharp with one snap of the jaw it could eat a small child. The noise that emitted from the creature was such a guttural growl that it shook the 225 parishioners to their core as it vibrated and bounced off the beams of the cathedral ceiling. The creature appeared to be filled with rage. The churchgoers cowered and prayed fiercely. The young Oberlin children began to cry and ask what was happening. Sarah told them to look away and be very quiet, that the woman was just having a seizure. At this moment, the minister held up his hand towards the creature and said, "Satan, you have no authority here." The growls of the monster worsened and began panting heavily. Spit was flying everywhere. It stood there for what seemed like an hour, until eventually an usher named Tom Wright came up behind the creature and grabbed it and pulled it towards him down onto the pew. All of a sudden, the woman had returned to normal and was half on Mr. Wright's lap and half on the pew. The ushers and minister carried the woman off to another room of the church. When Ken asked the minister what happened to the woman, the minister claimed that the woman remained held captive at the church until a higher authority came to collect her and any evidence they could of the instance. She was then taken to a top-secret facility where she was tested. The minister claimed that the woman was possessed. After that day, odd residual energy resided in the church. Many parishioners said that they felt uncomfortable being there, claiming that they had heard demonic noises and that there was ghost-like activity. Because of this wolf transformation and the aftermath of the incident, many people switched churches. Within a few years, the minister had passed away and the church was left abandoned and was torn down.
Wow.
Dun dun dun.
That is so much craziness going on right there.
Right? It was like they said that she just instantly changed pretty much. Like she started contorting, but it only took just seconds for her to turn into this wolf.
And this is a big sermon. Like this is a lot of witnesses.
Yeah, a lot of witnesses. And they just never talked about it. It was like some...
Well, it's like your
thing
father. Like people who just don't want to believe in these type of things.
Yep.
And maybe
they don't want to believe in it.
They're just going to like deny.
Yeah. And they said, so it was unknown where she was taken. Did the Vatican come and get her? Did CIA, FBI? Somebody came and got her and tested. The priest said that they did many tests on her to try to exorcise the demon out.
My one thought was like, dang, that minister's badass to just be like, Satan, you have no authority. Like he's doing his job. But then I thought, what if this was some sort of like great marketing hoax for the church?
Maybe, except for it went out. He died and the place closed down and they tore it down.
It did not work. It backfired.
Yeah, totally backfired.
I can't believe that werewolf type transformations are still being reported about to this day.
Yeah, because that was in the 90s. That was crazy. And I've read stuff about things happening recently about not people transforming, but people seeing, werewolves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's altogether creepy. I really thought when we were going to be doing this episode, it would be all fiction. I had no idea. This was just something that people claim happens.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if I would say I still believe in werewolves, but I mean, I don't know.
I wonder if there's other explanations for it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I hope that Linda Godfrey's not a liar.
I hope not too. It's not her information really. It's everybody else's. She's just gotten all of this. Yeah. She's collecting the information and putting it out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my story that I found was also from like a lot of Linda Godfrey research and just stuff that was reported about in newspapers, but I think it mostly was collected in one of her books.
Okay.
So my story is Werewolves in Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin is no stranger to werewolf sightings. Throughout the years, many witnesses have stepped forward, claiming to see a large, hairy, bipedal beast lurking around on nights of the full moon. Let me take you on a trip through time as we jump into the highlights of these bizarre and true stories of werewolf encounters. One of the first sightings was back in 1936. A man named Mark Shackleman was driving on Highway 18 just east of Jefferson, Wisconsin, when all of a sudden he spotted a figure digging in an old Indian mound off the side of the highway. He slowed down his car and looked closer. The figure was too distracted to notice. Mark saw a hair-covered creature. It stood erect and was over 6 feet tall. The face had a muzzle, and it had features of both ape and a dog. Its hands were oddly formed with a twisted thumb and 3 fully formed fingers. The beast was breathing rapidly as it dug up the earth. He began to gag, noticing a putrid smell that was like decaying meat coming off of the werewolf-looking creature. Just when Mark didn't think things could get any stranger, he returned to the site the following night, drawn to the beast, hoping to make sense of it all. He encountered him again, and this time the beast opened his jaws and spoke. Gadara. Shackleman was petrified and shaking. He began to pray and drove away from it as the creature dashed away into the brush. In 1989, one cold fall night, Lorene Endrizzi was rounding a curve on Bray Road and saw what she thought was a person hunched over on the side of the road. When she slowed down, she took a closer look at the figure on the passenger side of the car. She was no more than 6 feet away from it at the time. The sighting lasted for about 45 seconds, and she stared. She clearly saw a beast with grayish-brown hair, fangs, and pointed ears. His face was long and snouty like a wolf. The creature's eyes were glowing yellow, and it looked exactly like a werewolf's. It had a wide, powerful chest and build. The hairy arms were muscular, and the creature seemed to have human-like fingers with claws on the ends, and its back legs were bent behind it. Yet something about the beast appeared to be so human-like that it was scary. She thought it was a freak of nature. Lorene was frozen in fear as she continued to drive on in autopilot down Bray Road, leaving the creature behind her in the rearview mirror. Jumping forward 10 years in time to a dark, rainy Halloween night, 1999. 18-year-old Dorothy Gibson was driving along Bray Road, just a mile from the site of the previous incident. As she neared the intersection, she heard a bump and felt her right front tire jump off the ground as if she had hit something. So she stopped the car, worried about what she might have hit and what damage it may have caused the car. Dora stepped out and peered through the rain into the dark road behind her. She saw a hairy form racing toward her. She screamed and jumped back into the car and was attempting to drive away when the beast leapt onto her trunk with a loud bang, causing her car to shake. Luckily, the car's wet surface was slick and the werewolf slipped right off onto the pavement with a thud. Dora sped off into the night, shocked and heart-pounding from the attack.
Ooh.
So everyone who drives on this road kind of has a chance of seeing a werewolf.
Yeah, that's cool. Guess we're going on a road trip.
Yeah, apparently Wisconsin is a really weird place with a lot of things. And I thought, like, when I was reading that story and they were saying Indian mounds, I thought that was interesting. And I was like, oh, I should look up what that is. And then I just happened to have, like, one of those synchronicity moments because I was just reading a book I had bought from the bookstore earlier, and it was called Myths and Legends of the North American Indians by Lewis Spence, and he just has a whole section on the mounds of Wisconsin.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I know, and it was like the day after I read that story, I was like, oh, perfect, thanks, universe, this is exactly what I wanted to look up.
Yeah.
So I found out that the mounds that maybe that werewolf was digging up, they were like made by Indians back in the day, and they would normally be like in a pyramid shape or circular. Sometimes they'd be like in a pentagonal shape or even in an animal shape. And these mounds could be anywhere from like 80 feet to 100 feet high and maybe 600 to 300 feet in diameter. So wow, I was wondering if these kind of mythical mounds had anything to do with the sightings. They use these mounds for sometimes burial, like putting bodies in there, or ashes. They would use these mounds to do sacrifices or just observation, and they were like sacred temple sites. And when people have gone through to see what's in there, they found like copper plates with these like intricate stamped designs on them. There's even been like stone hatchet blades found in there, tobacco pipes, pottery, bone needles, scrolls, and then like the cremation remains. So I was like, ooh, are these like calling forth these weird beings?
Oh, that's so cool.
So there's like a lot of theories as to what these werewolves could be. Like some say maybe they're just being labeled as werewolves because they don't have any other word for it, but maybe they are demonic beings, which would make sense to your church lady story. Maybe they're just shapeshifters, and that people call them dogmen or dogman.
Yeah, I've read a lot of stories about the dogman.
The dogman is something that's kind of coming into my viewpoint recently. And that maybe they're even of alien origin.
Yeah, because I hear a lot of tales of like, oh, I'll see these lights in the sky, and then all of a sudden a dog man appears. Yeah.
Yeah. I was reading an article actually right before we started recording that Linda Godfrey, the author of both of these books, was contacted by this expert in remote viewing, which you may or may not believe in, but for those who don't know, it's just someone who says they have the power to basically like transport themselves to another place, and it kind of like a form of astral travel. So this guy says that he was astral traveling into the U.S. government, some sort of like facility, and that they had uncovered data that suggests that dogmen are like a really ancient alien race that closely resembles the ancient deity of the underworld, Anubis, and that these dogmen can jump from location to location via portals or doorways through the fabric of space and time. So it gets real out there.
Plausible. Yeah, it gets plausible.
There's just so many weird theories, and you know, a lot of people in Wisconsin have reported seeing these things. You've got the church lady. It's like, what are they seeing?
Yeah, what exactly was it? I definitely think mine could have been a demon for sure. I mean, it was kind of taking over this woman, and they said it was like she just immediately changed. I mean, even though she contorted a little bit, it wasn't anything like I've read in the stories where it was severely changing her body.
Right.
Just boom. So you said a word during your story.
Yeah, so the werewolf, I think the earliest sighting, the werewolf spoke. It said the word Gadara.
Yeah, what is that?
I looked it up, and it's actually this ancient city in the Middle East, and it's one of the Greek cities of the Decapolis. It's described in the Bible as the place where Jesus cast demons out of a man and into a herd of swine, which then threw themselves into the sea. So it's a little bit to do about like maybe demons and exorcisms.
Right. Okay.
Which kind of ties in again to the whole thought that there are demons.
Right. It's interesting, like that thing that you read too about the guy saying they were like Anubis. I mean, people honestly felt like Anubis was real for a lot of years. So maybe he was. I don't know.
Yeah, and why are they just hanging out on the roadsides of Wisconsin?
Right.
Going to churches.
Right. Like, yeah, absolutely. What the heck?
It is. I don't know if this is something I believe in. I find it fascinating, but
right.
It's not like Bigfoot where I'm like, yes, I believe he's there. I don't know if I believe in dogmen, and I really hope I never see one.
Right.
How do you feel about
Agreed.
dogmen?
It's just like vampires and werewolves. I don't necessarily believe in them. I believe that there are people who think that they are vampires because they drink blood or whatever, but they don't actually, I mean, they're not immortal.
Yeah, it's like saying you identify as a vampire, but you're not a vampire.
Right. So
it's a big thing in New Orleans, apparently.
I definitely believe in hypertrichosis. Is that what it was? Yeah. I believe in that hairy thing. I believe that exists for sure. It's really hard to say. What about you guys? What do you think?
Yeah, are all these people, are they all lying? Or did they see something?
It's a lot of stories to be, it's a lot of stories to be a lie, but
it really is, because this is just
what did they see? Yeah. Because there are literally thousands of stories, and it's crazy because right before the podcast, I had sent you some information about newer sightings of the dog man. And that one, I'm just like, what? They're still having sightings? Like, just within the last couple of weeks, there was one in Colorado. Last month, there was one, or days before that, there was one in California. So is he traveling from place to place? So it was like, dang, what's up, dude?
I think the one explanation, I can't speak. Explanation that I can agree with or make sense of is aliens, because it's just like, well, that's an unknown creature that I believe in that I think has unlimited power that I don't understand.
Right.
Or maybe,
and we don't know. Like, have you ever, I know we already talked about Twilight just a little bit, but she wrote, that girl who wrote those, I forget her name, Stephanie Myers. So she wrote another book called The Host.
Oh, yeah.
And so I read that, which the movie sucked compared to the book.
I forgot
the book was pretty good.
Movie.
Yeah, the book was pretty good. What I liked about that is it talked about all these different aliens. Like, when we think of aliens, they're not necessarily like us. It could be an animal. It could be, a fish. It could be a bug that's from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking of a werewolf being an alien, I might be able to get behind that theory.
Yeah, some sort of interdimensional species, because it's just, I don't think that these are living on Earth with us.
Right.
The way I believe Bigfoot is. I don't know why that is. Maybe because this is a newer concept to me, dogmen and werewolf sightings, but I think they just maybe are in here for a little bit of time. But with that whole church lady story, the guy just pulls her down and she just goes back to normal.
Yeah, that was so weird, right?
It is weird.
Yeah.
And they said that it felt like an hour where she was just there standing in a wolf
form. But really only minutes had gone by. But it felt like eternity.
Right, because it was just so odd.
Yeah. It was just like, what's going on?
I don't think you can make sense of these instances, but I think it would be wrong to just discredit everything that we don't understand.
Right. I know. Just because it's hard. Because anything paranormal, it's like, oh, I don't believe in this. I do believe in this. And everybody can have their own opinion. But seriously, if it is real, it's just because science can't explain it or humans can't explain what's going on yet. We don't have the capability.
Yeah. It does seem like being a werewolf would be a tragic thing. It's like not a cool thing. Like,
right.
I think of Professor Lupin from Harry Potter. He's probably one of my favorite werewolf characters, but like how he's always ragged and tired and exhausted. Like it's not sexy Alcide running around.
I know, yeah, for sure. Alcide.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for listening to another episode. Make sure to join us next Wednesday for another special guest episode with my second cousin and Wendy's daughter, Clarissa. We're going to be discussing the weird and the witchy. So don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And check out our blog at cousenscoven.home.blog. We are also on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else podcasts can be found. Send Cauldron topic ideas, questions, or your paranormal experiences into cousenscoven2@gmail.com, and maybe we'll read them on air.
Yes. And may you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and joy in each other. Blessings to all.
You killed the wolf.
Well, there's no crime in that, is there?
A werewolf can be killed only with a silver bullet. Take this charm, the pentagram. It can break the evil spell. Whoever is bitten by a werewolf and lives becomes a werewolf himself.